right. Hey, appreciate everybody coming tonight. Standing room only crowd for IT governance as usual. I know it's a super exciting topic. That's why everybody's here. So, my name is Nick Mullen. I'm the founder and CEO of Sanguine Security Solutions. We are a boutique consulting firm, which is the nicest way of saying small. We do GRC as a service, identity MDR, solution delivery, advisory in the security and governance space. And because I don't have enough going on, I also manage the IT governance program at Mutual of Omaha Insurance as my day job. So obviously I work probably way too much. So it's my first CypherCon, first time in Milwaukee. Great city. Thanks for having me, Milwaukee natives. Was a little bit worried today about getting up here. My sinuses have been going nuts. So if you see me rubbing my nose, it's because for some reason, I think probably the weather or something it's been kind of killing me here today. So, but anyway, today we're here to talk about IT governance, or as some might call it, the red tape factory. In all seriousness, governance is important. And it's probably never been more at the forefront of people's minds in the security space than it is right now. And who do we have to thank for that? Anybody? Our friends over at NIST. So if you've seen the new NIST CSF 2.0 that was just released, you see govern is right smack dab in the middle ring. It used to only contain those 5 functions: identify, protect, detect, respond, and recover. Now you see that governance is right in the middle of all those. So why is that? Well, it's because NIST thinks that we need to govern all the things, right? All right, there we go. So let's dig in a little bit and talk about what governance is and what it should look like. So governance comes from the Greek word kubernao. I think I'm maybe pronouncing that correctly. So on the screen here, you're going to see your standard types of definitions of what governance is. In layman's terms, governance is how your organization makes sure that it's doing the things it's supposed to be doing. Meaning, it's one thing to say this is what we should do, but it's another thing to actually make sure you're doing it and doing it well. So because I like to keep things simple, we're going to talk a little bit about governance in a way that everybody has a little bit of experience with. Our friends over at the government. All right, so this is the easiest example of governance. It's even got it in the name: governance, government. So when we think of the government, we tend to think of what? Anybody? Bueller? Bureaucracy. There you go, bureaucracy. But the government really is there to do a lot more. The government establishes the rules that we have decided to adopt in order to best realize a civilized and harmonious society. They ensure that society is provided with the goods and services and infrastructure that we need in order to live and prosper. There are a lot of things in our day-to-day lives that are provided by the government, or at least sometimes provided by the government, that we don't even think about. The Postal Service, it's a government service. Police and fire, the government plows our roads. They provide us with clean water. In some cases, they produce our electricity. They subsidize our food. They feed the poor and they house the underprivileged. They provide Social Security and Medicare, the public education system, labor laws, copyright laws, workplace safety laws, banking regulations. It's all the government. It's a lot. It's a whole lot. So going back to this previous slide, the government directs and controls the organizational components that we consider necessary to make up a civilized society. They define the structures and the processes involved in managing our societal risk, in optimizing our resources, and in creating value back to the taxpayer, the citizens of this, the municipality, the state, the country. So what does good governance look like? Well, since we're sticking on this government example, I'm going to flip the script real quick, and I'm going to make this a little bit easier. We're going to talk about what bad governance looks like. So, anybody want to give me an example of bad governance? Somebody. Bueller. What about when the roads are full of potholes? Or when the schools are in disrepair? You ever seen one of those news articles where I had a picture on, I gave a similar talk a few months ago, and it was a school where all the all the panels and the ceilings were falling down and it was raining inside the room while the kids were trying to learn. That would be bad governance. It's when the street lights don't work. It's when the snow doesn't get plowed in the winter. It's when you call 911 and nobody picks up, or they say, sorry, we're busy. It's when you call the city or the state to ask for help and you sit on hold for an hour. And then when they do pick up, nobody can tell you who does what. Anybody ever experienced that? It's a lot of fun, right? It's when you got people camping on the sidewalks and trash all over the street. It's when you read an article about another corrupt politician and you know they're probably just going to get reelected. Like, that's bad governance. That's when you sit back as a taxpayer and you think, where are all my tax dollars going? Well, you don't want that in your company. So that's why you have IT governance. So let's flip this a little bit and let's talk about good governance. Anybody give me an example of good governance? There you go. Thank you. That's good. Like, that stuff doesn't happen just out of the blue. You know, good governance is trickier to describe. That's because good governance is hard to see. Good governance is transparent. Good governance is when things are happening the way that you expect them to happen. It's when things are working the way that you expect them to work. Good governance sits in the background, quietly supporting us while we go about our day-to-day lives. This is what you want your IT governance program to look and feel like. You want it to be something that's transparent, that supports and enables your organization to work the way that it should. Now, there's a lot of value in governance, particularly in the technology space. Now, if you think back to what we talked about earlier, governance is how your organization makes sure that it's doing the things that it's supposed to be doing. Operating efficiently and transparently, that's something we should probably be doing. Like, our business partners want us to operate transparently and efficiently. Aligning our technology capabilities with the enterprise goals and strategies. Yeah, like, the technology and the tools that we bring in should support the business. Like, that's something that we should be doing. Keeping systems and data available and secure. Yeah, now you're speaking my language. Probably everybody in here. Those are things that we want to be doing. Collaboration, decision-making, managing risk, staying compliant. Check, 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 check. Those are all the things that we want a governance program to do. And those are all valuable things back to the enterprise. But here's the rub. None of this happens by accident. If you don't believe me, think about the last time you were talking to somebody about something and you realized, yeah, we should probably be doing that, but I'm sure we're not. Or if you hear the dreaded, yeah, that's not my job. And I don't really know whose it is, but it's definitely not mine. Now, sure, you both know in that example that this thing needs to get done. But without some sort of overarching governance in place, no one knows who should be doing it. And nobody is doing it. So how do you get from 0 to 100? That's what we're going to dive into a little bit here next. So typically when you stand up a governance program, what you're actually doing is building what ISACA calls a governance system. So a governance system it's designed in ways that provide value back to your enterprise. You don't want to be doing things in IT that aren't valuable to the business. Another nice thing about a governance system is it should be tailored to your organizational needs. And it should be dynamic and fluid. Business changes every day. Your governance system can't be stringent and inflexible. It has to be dynamic. A governance system is built from a number of different components that work together holistically. And it utilizes frameworks. Now, these last couple things I'm going to talk about specifically, these governance system components and frameworks, because these are really important. Governance system components, these are the ISACA definitions, which ISACA, that's, most of you guys have probably heard of ISACA. ISACA has COVID 2019, which is in my opinion, probably the best enterprise governance of information and technology framework that exists today. It's got over 1,100 controls. So if you want some light reading, you can go pick up one of the COVID 2019 framework guides. It's about 360 pages. But when you look at these components, all these are things that are involved in a functioning governance system. Processes to keep things organized, to help you achieve the objectives and produce the outputs that the organization needs. Organizational structures. Like if you're not a very small company, and even if you are a pretty small company, you should probably have organizational structures so you know who does what. Principles, policies, frameworks, they help you translate desired behavior into practical rules and guidance. And then the information that you collect and you use for so many things. The information is going to help your business run. It's going to help you make decisions. It's going to help you ensure that things are happening the way that they're supposed to be happening. Culture, ethics, behavior. These are things that make sure your organization is running the way that you want it to, and people are treating the way that you expect them to. And then those people skills and competencies, well, we have to have people, and they have to know what they're doing. And lastly, services, infrastructure, applications. These are things that are really important to us. These are the tools and technology that your business uses to keep the lights on and grow. So generally speaking, you need to account for these things when you're building your governance system. That's why these are the governance system components. Now, when we're talking about IT, a framework is super important. So a framework is kind of like a roadmap or a blueprint for governing something. It's what good or right looks like. Now, typically a framework is going to be built and published by some sort of industry association like ISACA or some sort of overarching authority like NIST that specializes in the type of work that the framework describes. So you can see some really popular frameworks that are here on the board. And these are actually kind of all over the place. So COBIT, again, is an enterprise governance of information and technology framework. COBIT covers the whole gambit. Like I said, it's 1,100 controls. You can go into ITIL, so it's the Infrastructure Technology Information Library. It's for IT service management. NIST-CSF, we're probably all familiar with that. It's the National Institute of Standards and Technology Cybersecurity Framework. DMBOK, so that's the Data Management Body of Knowledge. It's from DAMA International. PMBOK, the Project Management Body of Knowledge from PMI. SWEBOK, the Software Engineering Body of Knowledge. And then lastly, another example, the AWS Well-Architected Framework. If you're using AWS for your cloud instances, you probably want to utilize the AWS Well-Architected Framework. It's a guide that AWS has put together to help you manage cloud services securely and efficiently. So why use a framework? Well, I guess the simplest answer there is because it's the smart thing to do. Take the hard lessons that other people have already learned through experience and let that guide you. That's why you want to use a framework. Why try to figure it out all on your own? Why try to reinvent the wheel? Are you really that smart? I'm not. So I'll be the first one to admit. Now, I mean, maybe you are, but here's the nice thing about a framework. You don't have to be. That's the beauty of utilizing a framework that someone else has already built and published. Now, here's the thing about frameworks. Just because it says you should do X, Y, Z doesn't mean you have to do X, Y, Z, particularly if it doesn't make sense for your organization. You're going to have your own priorities, your own needs, your own limitations. So take that framework and use it as a guide, but you don't necessarily have to adopt it to the letter. So a good example of that is if you look in NIST-CSF, there are examples in there that talk about securing physical assets, secure access control into physical data centers. Was anybody here work for a 100% remote company that doesn't have a physical data center? Anyone? We got, hey, is that Jay back there? Hey, there we go, Jay. Yeah, I mean, a lot of our organizations are remote only. I had a consulting client last year that they've been in business for 20 years. And for the last 10 years, they haven't had any physical location. So your controls around physical access aren't going to be that necessary. Now, I've said this a couple times, but I want to reiterate. Governance doesn't happen by accident. And governance systems don't come together by accident either, particularly when you don't have an organized governance program in place already. So a governance program is how you're going to organize and implement your governance system. So how do you build and implement a governance program? Well, there's a framework for that, believe it or not. There's a guide for that. COVID-19 actually provides you with a guide. So here's a quick plug for ISACA. I am an ISACA member. ISACA's here, but I'm not affiliated with them. It's a $135 a year membership, provides you free access to a treasure trove of downloadable materials. I've got a big list here of all the different guides, executive summary of COVID-19, the framework introduction and methodology, design guide, governance and management objectives, literally dozens of documents, guides, workbooks, spreadsheets in multiple languages. You got English, Spanish, Chinese, Japanese, German. A lot of them are free. Thousands of pages. It's a heck of a bargain for $135 a year if you're into governance. But anyway, back to kind of our regularly scheduled programming here. If you're building a governance program, notice this last bullet. You should have defined, achievable objectives. So I'm a project manager by trade. That's what I've been doing for the last decade or so, for the most part. Let me tell you, as someone who I consider myself to be a pretty successful project manager, if you're managing a project or a program and you don't have defined, achievable objectives, good luck with your project or program. You're not going to get very far. So with governance, what does that look like? Well, here we go. We've got some governance program objectives. Now, these are example objectives, meaning these are things that you could use if you were trying to implement a governance program. But in my opinion, these are pretty good objectives to have. But again, your use cases may differ, your mileage may vary, but this is something that you could use. So when you look at outcome alignment, what that really means is you want to align your technology strategies and objectives and your goals with your organizational or enterprise strategies, objectives, and goals. So if you've got a goal at the organizational level to grow 10% over the next year, you need to align your technology capabilities with that goal. Otherwise, you're going to run into a problem where the business area is coming back to you and they're saying, hey, we're trying to grow and you guys aren't matching us. So you need to have alignment with the outcome of your technology department and your business area. So how do you do that? Well, you establish and maintain an easy to understand goals cascade. And believe it or not, ISACA tells you exactly how to do that. But it flows from the enterprise down to the division, to the department, to the team. You should be able to map up and down. This is what my team's doing. This is how what my team is doing aids my division. Here's what my division is doing. Here's how this supports the department. And here's how this supports the company or the enterprise. And you want to establish a system for monitoring and reporting the results at each level to enable timely decision making. Risk governance. You're going to hear a lot about risk. We talk a lot about risk. You need to have a dynamic and systematic approach to identifying, assessing, and managing technology-related risk. So a lot of times what this means is creating a risk register, some sort of centralized inventory of a technology risk that you have in your organization, and you need to integrate those with governance system components like controls and governance bodies that you may have stood up. You need to operationalize risk governance and put the right voices in the room to enable more comprehensive and informed decision making. Resource optimization. So you want to be able to optimize the use of technology resources, including information, applications, infrastructure, and people. And when you optimize those, it should be in a way that helps you achieve enterprise goals. So I heard Chris Roberts talk about this earlier today. One of the first things you should do there is maintain a centralized, up-to-date inventory of physical, logical, and software assets. If you don't know what you have, you're going to have a hard time managing it. You're going to have a hard time governing it. And you're certainly going to have a hard time optimizing those resources. Has anybody out here ever been with a company that went out and bought a new tool or technology only to find out after you paid a couple $100,000 for it that you've got 2 tools in your inventory that already do the same damn thing? Yeah, that's resource optimization. And that stuff happens when the right voices aren't in the room. Governance helps put those right voices in the room. Stakeholder engagement and transparency. You want to engage your stakeholders. You need to understand what their needs are and what their expectations are. And you want to create transparency back to them by providing reliable and accurate and timely information. So the way that you do that is you operationalize processes for identifying and engaging those stakeholders, understanding what their needs are, and then how well those needs are being satisfied. You want to report back key decisions and outcomes and share those results reliably. And then that stakeholder feedback needs to be disseminated throughout your IT organization or department. Now we're going to get into some stuff that I really like, a compliance system. So you need to have a system in place that establishes and maintains policies, standards, processes, and procedures, and those should be enabled by controls that support compliance with regulatory and contractual obligations. So it's a little bit difficult to get there. You need to know what laws you need to comply with, what contractual obligations you have. You should create an inventory of those, map your controls to those, and your controls should be mapped to your policies and standards. We'll talk a little bit more about that here in a second. Organizational structures. So define and maintain scopes, duties, and responsibilities of the different organizational structures within your organization, and employees should have access to that. And the last piece here is performance and improvement. So you should constantly be going back and looking at this and saying, are we doing the right things and is it working? So real quick, I'm going to kind of run through these next few slides here, but one of the things I promised I'd talk about is the intersection of risk and compliance with governance. And we've talked about risk and compliance a couple times already, but it's pretty common to see these two snuggled up right next to governance. So these are three separate things, right? Well, they are, but this is what GRC actually looks like, right? Well, I'd actually make the argument that it probably looks a little bit more like this. Because here's the thing, you're not going to get very far in your risk management program without good governance. And you're probably not staying compliant for long without good governance. So figuring out where one begins and another ends can feel a little bit like trying to put socks on a rooster. It's because these things are about as intertwined can get. And that's why we have GRC programs in security. So if you don't believe me, let's go back to NIST. So this is part of a new governance function in NIST. There's a section here all on risk management strategy. NIST is basically considering these two things as being intertwined. Or you go into PCI DSS. So this is a new DSS 4. You look at requirement 12.1. It specifically calls out governance. You have to have a comprehensive security policy that governs and provides direction. So remember when I said earlier that governance is how your organization makes sure that it's doing the things that it's supposed to be doing? PCI DSS actually calls that out. And in fact, the new PCI 4 calls out governance 9 times throughout the release. All right, so going back to this slide here, I created this to try and visualize the concept that no matter what corner you start from in GRC, you're not going to travel far before you hit one of these other topics, which to me is pretty cool. Almost everything you do is going to help move the needle in one of these other areas, and it makes this work super meaningful and super important. Now, wrapping up here real quick, let me give you an example of how this can all come together. So I'm going to start at this regulatory and compliance corner. So you've got your regulatory and contractual obligations. That's compliance. Then you've got your policies and standards. You're going to map those back to your regulatory or your compliance requirements, we'll just call it that. Here's the thing. Those policies and standards should have owners because when they get updated, you should know who needs to update them. Those owners those policies and standards should be mapped to controls. Those should also have owners. You should create a control catalog to map out all the controls that you have in place, even the ones that aren't security related. There's a lot of data controls that don't have anything to do with security that are super important. Then you go next and you look at the tools, services, processes, capabilities that you have in your organization. You want to map those back to the controls because those are the things that are enabling the controls or facilitating the controls. And you guessed it, those should all have owners too. Take that one step further and you're building out a risk register. And you want to align those risks with the controls that help mitigate or reduce them. You've built out a comprehensive asset inventory, and you've documented your technology portfolio. And guess what? All those assets have owners too. All those technologies that you have, all those pieces of software, those all have owners. And those risks that are in your risk register, you want to align those with your assets and your technology and the technologies that they impact. So now you've got a really strong foundation of governance, risk, and compliance started just from starting in the compliance corner. Now, once you get this foundation built, you can start getting to a higher level of maturity. That's when you're going to look at things like governance bodies, business impact analysis, which you should probably already be doing for your technology resiliency program. Now, here's the thing. This all feels like a lot, and it's because it is a lot. But is there anything on here that feels like a waste of time? Is there anything that is on here that won't help your organization in one way or another? Is there anything that you're going to regret doing? I would make the argument that there's not. And there's a lot of folks out there that would agree. So these are things that you can work towards right now to improve governance within your organization. They aren't all quick and they aren't all easy. Now, a pro tip is you can use a GRC platform or some sort of tool to help make this a lot faster. You can automate a lot of things. You can assign owners. Typically, those pay for themselves in man hours. But this is why I said that governance programmers require resources, prioritization, and ongoing support, because it's a big undertaking, but you can get there. You got to think of it a little bit like eating an elephant. Does anybody in here know how you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. It may take you 5 years to get there, but it's going to be 5 years well spent. All right, I know we're about at time. I'm not going to take up the next speaker here, but if you've got any questions, feel free to reach out to me. This QR code, no payloads, I promise. This will take you to my LinkedIn if you want to connect. I'm happy to answer any questions later on. If you want to chat about governance, security, or if you want help designing or implementing your governance program, happy to help. Nick Mullen at sanguinesecure.com. It's been a pleasure. Thanks so much, guys.